thank you to our song leaders. Thank you to Leslie for that meditation. I invite you now, if you need to stretch and move, listen to your body. We've been sitting in chairs. Do whatever feels right in this moment to take care of your body. When I started high school, I joined the color guard. It's the group that spins flags with the marching band. And I loved it so much. I loved it. One reason I loved it was because as a kid, I had always been self-conscious about my body, how big it was, how much space I took up. And here, I found an activity where the whole purpose was to take up space. In color guard, you wanted everything to be big so that you could be seen on that giant football field from far away. Having that space and that permission to be big and dramatic and perform, that was my favorite part of my high school experience. And so I sought out more of it. I joined competitive color guard programs that were outside of my high school. Gone were the days of just waving a flag in the air and smiling. We were given rigorous and complex routines that combined spinning and tossing and dancing with pageantry and precision. I continued to love it. I loved everything except the dance classes that came along with it. You see, in dance class, our instructors looked at form and they looked at technique. Were you pointing your foot? Were you moving with intention? Were you extending as best you could? It was not enough to go through the motions of the choreography. I was supposed to do it all with intention. It was not enough to just move, my instructors would say. You've got to pay attention to how you move. I couldn't figure out what the hell they were talking about. At every dance class, my instructors would coach me through which muscles I should be engaging, reminding me to move from my core. They would pull me aside personally to work with me one-on-one. They were frustrated that I didn't seem to be getting it. It just didn't compute for me. I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I said. No, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not, they said. I felt like there was something wrong with me. Looking back on those frustrations, it makes total sense to me now. You see, when I was a kid, I hated my body. I resented the fat on my body. I had been on diet after diet. I often slouched, trying to hide how tall I was. I didn't like living in the body I was given. I wanted a different one. I had pushed away my body for so long. I just didn't know how to be in my body. In those dance classes, I didn't understand how to connect with this body that I had wanted no connection to. What does it feel like to be in your body? I invite us to just take a moment, be in our bodies right now, in whatever way feels right to you. Let's just remind ourselves that we have bodies. Perhaps you can connect to your body in your breath. Perhaps in some sort of movement or some simple awareness. Perhaps by touching something or engaging in the senses. What does it feel like to be in your body? There's no right answer. Just invite us to notice. Our Unitarian Universalist faith affirms all bodies as sacred. We get this message from all of our faith sources. We've got our Judeo-Christian ancestors who told stories of humanity made in God's image, of divine incarnated in human flesh. We've got science that tells us that we are made of stardust, that every atom in our bodies has been around since the Big Bang. It's all brought to life in us. We've got the wisdom of the earth that points to how our bodies replicate the wonders of the natural world. Our lungs are designed like trees. Our veins are designed like rivers and streams. We've got entire ecosystems in our gut filled with microorganisms. And our own direct experience of life tells us that everything we experience is through our bodies. Everything we experience is through our bodies, whether we realize it or not. All bodies are wondrous and sacred. But they're not treated that way in the world we live in, are they? I was listening to a podcast recently where they were interviewing someone who had escaped from a cult. And in the interview, the person shared that one of the core teachings of this harmful and controlling group they had belonged to was that your body is something that cannot be trusted. But the body is something to overcome. You've got to learn how to override the messages your body is sending. In the cult, this messaging was framed in many convincing and subtle ways. If we listen to our bodies tell us how nice it feels to stay in our warm, cozy beds, it keeps us from getting out of bed and reaching our goals and our full potential. See? Our bodies trick us and hold us back, they would say. As people got deeper and deeper into the cult, they became more and more entrenched in these teachings, and things escalated. So when they were in situations of abuse and they felt their body telling them, something's not right here, I don't like this, or this hurts, they had already been trained to shut down those messages in their body, to convince themselves that everything was fine, that it was just their body getting in their way. Body is something to overcome, they would remind themselves. Damaging and dangerous messaging, right? And yet, it was so easy for them to learn. It was so convincing. So easy to learn because of all the many ways we are trained to devalue our bodies all the time. The messaging that tells so many of us that we should hate how our bodies look in comparison to others. Our bodies need to be different. The messaging that tells us that we should be embarrassed or dismayed by our body's natural processes like aging. The messaging that tells us that the mind and the body are separate and the mind is superior. Mind over matter, they say. All messages that serve to eject us from our bodies. Our body is something that needs to be controlled, we are told. Our body is something to conquer, master. This wondrous and sacred body. You know, it all makes me think of the placement of God in popular theology. Have you ever noticed that it's so common for people to talk about God as a transcendent being separate from us, somewhere out there, up there in heaven, ruling down on us. There's strategy in the design of that cosmos, that separation. If God is out there somewhere in heaven, separate from us, then divinity exists somewhere else, not here in this world, somewhere else in another lifetime. It leaves everything down here, the earth, our bodies, leaves it all as fair game for control and exploitation. We see it all the time. We see it in the way our planet is treated. We see it in the way our bodies are treated. We see it in the way other bodies are treated. We see it in the legislation that has stripped away reproductive rights for people. We see it in the treatment of trans and queer bodies, in the policing of bodies that are not white. Controlling bodies is the easiest and most efficient step toward controlling people. That cult knew that. But if we all understand that divinity is not somewhere else, divinity is here among us, not out there separate from us, here among us, within us, working through us, if we awaken to the idea that all of creation is divine, and that means all bodies are divine.
Amen.
Then there couldn't possibly be justification for control of bodies or harm done to bodies.
Power.
All bodies are sacred, including yours.
Amen.
Friends, centering ourselves in our bodies, befriending our bodies, living in a way that's deeply connected to our bodies, that is a deep spiritual practice. It's a way of conferring with the sacred. And it's also a crucial form of resistance. Resistance against the messages that convince us that all bodies aren't worthy of wonder and love. It's resistance against all the messages that take us out of our own bodies and tell us that bodies are something to be conquered and controlled, when the truth is, when you think about it, your body's on your team.
Amen.
Our bodies are designed to take care of us. Their sole purpose is to allow us to exist. Our bodies move us from place to place. Our bodies thirst to signal that we need to hydrate. They create white blood cells to fight off infections. They tell us when we need to rest. They warn us when they perceive us as being in danger. Not all bodies work the same way in these respects, and sometimes the signals we get are off, and trauma and disease and chronic pain make things complicated. But our bodies are trying their best to protect us and keep us safe. Our bodies are on our team, and we need to support them like a teammate. Poet and activist and advocate of radical self-love, author of The Body Is Not an Apology, Sonia Renee Taylor, says, "What does it mean to decide that my body and I are on the same team? It means it's not a thing I control. It's not a thing that has to do my bidding." She goes on to say, "When I treat my body as a thing that has to do my bidding, where else do we see that? Where else does that dynamic play out? Oh, in all manner of inequity and injustice." And so the question is, am I in a just relationship with my body. If I'm saying I want to practice justice, am I in a just relationship with my being right now, today? Are the dynamics of dominance, control, coercion, force, are all of those the way that I am in relationship with my body? We often think of justice in the external world. But here, Sonia Renee Taylor poses a profound question. What does a just relationship with your body look and feel like? Our relationships with our own bodies are the most intimate microcosms of our relationships in the world around us, the divinity of all creation. We need to know the sacredness of our body to understand the sacredness of other bodies. Let us grow closer to our bodies. Befriend them. Let us listen to what they are telling us. Let us feel what they. Let us treat them with love and respect and compassion and care. The kind of love and respect and compassion and care that all bodies, all wondrous, divine bodies deserve. May